How are you? Want to take a deep breath with me? I'll let you know how I am. I'm rattled, worried, afraid, grieving, all of those big feelings like most people I know are, and I think many people that I don't know. Especially right now, I'm thinking of people who are living in the country of the United States and watching what's happening to it. And it feels super weird sometimes to watch other fiber arts podcasts that don't even acknowledge what's going on. And I get it. I get that people are here to talk about knitting or spinning and they don't want to be political. But when things feel so huge and so scary, to me it feels strange not to have it acknowledged. So I wanted to start by acknowledging it. And if you're someone who feels that way too, then this is a place where we're going to talk about wool, we're going to talk about knitting, we're going to talk about spinning, and we're also going to acknowledge that there's a lot of terrifying things going on right now. I'm rattled, like I said, but I also am determined. In 2016, 2017, I had PTSD then, but it wasn't diagnosed. It wasn't a thing I had been working on. And when the administration came into power and won the election and then came into power in those years, I had months, I don't even know how long, but it was months, where just leaving the house was difficult. Seeing people I didn't know immediately made me feel panicky, as if I just wasn't safe. And I just wanted to hide. And it was very awful because I was so afraid and I felt powerless. I felt like I was so filled with fear that there was nothing I could do. And that was a terrible feeling. This time, I have all those bad feelings, but I don't have the uncontrollable panic. I'm able to leave the house. I'm able to see other people without feeling that paralyzing fear, even if there is still some fear there. And I feel like I've found a little bit of my power and my voice. I've been doing a lot of thinking about how I know I can't just fix the world. Wish I could. But that just like all of us, there are things in my power that I can do. There are things that play to my strengths, to my talents, and those are especially the things that I can do. And one of those things is just using my voice, both as a writer and I guess as a talker. And that's part of why I decided I should come back and do another podcast here. Because as small as it is, this is something I can do. I can sit with you, I can talk about fiber arts, and I can also acknowledge what's going on. And if that is helpful for even one person, then this has been worth it. With that, let me go into my usual intro, especially for anyone who hasn't been here before. My name is Christina, and this is Desert Agave Fiber Arts. I'm a Latinx, fat, bipolar, autistic writer and fiber artist with PTSD. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I grew up in Wisconsin and have lived in New Mexico since 1998. I've been a writer since forever, and I began exploring the fiber arts in 2021. Exploring my creativity through the fiber arts has reinvigorated my writing and led me away from trauma and depression and towards joy. In this podcast, I'll discuss primarily knitting and spinning, but also sometimes wool processing, sometimes sewing, sometimes embroidery, and often mental health. I'm not an expert in any of these things, but the process of discovery, experimentation, and wild leaps into the dark brings me joy, and I hope to share that with you. I should start with a finished object. This isn't going to be a usual fiber arts podcast structure. I decided that felt overwhelming, and I thought, well, if that's overwhelming, then do something else. So instead, I'm going to show you my new beautiful sweater, talk about that a little bit. Then I'm going to talk to you about a Christmas gift that I got, and then also an early birthday gift that I got that have both been really feeding my creative practice. And then we're going to go through my inventory of works in progress and talk about those a little bit. And that is where things are going to stay for now. And I will come back hopefully soon to talk about all the things that I haven't covered. Okay, so this sweater is the Gentle Lopi by Melody Hoffman. That's the designer. And it's knit up in Newtoden in this beautiful purple color. I kind of went on an unspun journey over the course of starting in the summer, but then really ramping up in the fall. In the summer, I started working on a cushion project with Newtoden that was my first time using unspun, and I found it really challenging. In retrospect, it had a lot to do with the fact that I was using unspun for the first time and I was also doing cables for the first time. Probably not the best combo, but I've been known to bite off more than I can chew when it comes to fiber arts more than once. So I worked on that this summer, ended up holding the unspun with some silk mohair to give it strength, and eventually kind of wandered off and worked on some other things. This fall, I started really wanting to explore unspun again, and in particular, being able to use it just on its own without something like a silk mohair held with it. And I kind of went on a journey. I ended up knitting my husband some fingerless mitts that he uses when he's cold in his office. And I got comfortable enough with the unspun that I really had an itch to make myself a garment with it. I wanted to see what it would be like. And this was, believe this was part of the October collection that Newtoden had. I don't remember the color names. I'm sorry. It might have been Mortar, but I'm not sure. But it's this gorgeous purple, which I couldn't resist. I got a sweater's quantity of it, and as soon as it arrived, I started swatching, and very soon afterwards, I cast on this sweater. It's a big, oversized tunic-length sweater. I'll stand up just so you can get a sense of how long it is. I mostly am wearing it with leggings. I know this is sort of a funny view of me with no head, but you can see big, oversized sleeves. You can see it still goes down so low that you can't see where it stops. I'm on tippy toes. You can see there's a little bit of a split hem. It's this big, comfortable, sort of oversized sweatshirt, almost dress tunic thing that I wear with leggings. I finished it last week. I think this is either the 5th or the 6th time I've worn it. Part of it is that I love it. Part of it is that this is really warm, wonderfully so. And I know that the way New Mexico weather works, probably by the end of February, it will be too warm to wear this. So I am just getting all the wears in that I can until winter goes away from New Mexico. For now, it's winter. For now, it feels wonderful. I'm wearing it next to skin, and I can tell it's there. I can feel the presence of the wool, but it does not bother me. It actually feels comforting. It's very light, but it's like a weighted blanket to me in that the slight prickle just sort of reminds me where I am. One of the issues that I have that is part of, I believe, being autistic is I have poor proprioception, meaning knowledge of where my body is in space. And this sweater tells me where I am, and I actually find that not irritating, not itchy, but very comforting. Putting this on, it feels like a hug. It feels like something where it's saying, hey, there you are, you're right here, you're gonna be okay. So I'm loving this sweater. Definitely looking forward to knitting something else with Newtoden again, and really glad that I dove into it and learned how to knit with it without breaking it constantly. I mean, it was interesting because I'm a tight knitter. My tension tends to be pretty tight. So I had to really relearn how to do things in order to knit with unspun without constantly breaking it. And I was able to learn that. I was able to learn to let go of a little of my tension, to just let it flow through my fingers, to the point where, I mean, really, I can count on one hand the number of times that the unspun yarn broke while I was working with it when I worked on the sweater. And mostly if it broke, it was because I had put it down without being careful, and then when I picked it back up, I discovered that some of the yarn had come apart. And of course, it's no big deal when that happens. The beautiful thing about unspun is that you can just felt it back together very quickly. So I really found working on this to be a pleasure, and it taught me to relax. And you know, I started it in November, finished it up last week. That has been a period of time where learning how to unclench and let go has been a gift. So this sweater, the making of it was a gift, the wearing of it is a gift. Really happy with it. Sorry, I just need some water. The next thing I wanted to share with you was a Christmas present I got from my husband. It was something I'd asked for. And you know, it's funny. I asked for this giant maker's portfolio. It's made by Thread and Maple, who makes all sorts of beautiful supplies for knitters. They make a binder for needles that are really popular and really quite pricey. And I don't have one of those, but I asked for this portfolio. You can see it's giant, and then inside there's a place for a notebook. The notebook is refillable. You can get new ones, which is good because I'm already more than halfway through this notebook. I've been filling it up like mad. Then on the other side, you can store pens, a ruler. It's actually big enough that I can put my laptop in here if I want to use it as a laptop case when I go out of the house to work. It's just a sensory pleasure. You know, when I asked for it, I wondered if I was being silly. And maybe I was being silly. But I wondered, you know, is this going to be yet another beautiful notebook that you never use? I'm sure any of you who write, even, you know, just journaling and stuff, probably know the experience of owning beautiful notebooks that are so beautiful you never actually write in them. Well, I can assure you this thing has been used. Like I told you, I'm more than halfway through it already. I'm not going to open it all the way because I don't necessarily want to show off what I've been writing. But it's become where I write down anything creative that I'm doing. I've been mixing it all up. So if I want to write a scene, a first draft of a scene for a project that I'm working on with my writing, I put it in here. But also, I have an inventory I took in here of my yarn stash. I have an inventory of all my works in progress. I have notes I've taken while reading through my various fiber crafting books. I have lists of projects I'd like to make someday. It's really been fun to put all of my creative thoughts in one place instead of trying to separate them out into different spaces. I've tried having a knitting notebook and a spinning notebook and a writing notebook. I lose them. I don't know where they are half the time. I end up mixing them up anyway, but then I don't remember which one was in where, and it just becomes a mess. This thing's huge. I haven't lost it once because it's so darn big, and everything's here. I know where to look. It's and I already bought some refills so that when I use up this notebook, I can just pop in another one and keep filling it up with my creative life. Let's see. What did I want to show you? Oh, I wanted to show you a couple things. I think mainly what I'll share right now is here's a page. I called it Cardigan Dreams. And this has been handy because I decided after doing my yarn stash inventory and my works in progress inventory that my plans to do a January 1st cast on, I decided to scrap that. I had been planning a beautiful red Sari Nordland sweater with cables and lace. Sure I'll make it some other time, but I'm not making it right now. And the reason why I decided to scrap it was because I looked at how many works in progress I had going. I looked at how many garments I finished in 2024. The answer is 2. 1 t-shirt for me, 1 sweater for my husband. And I was kind of like, you know, I like having a lot of works in progress, but I'm actually really frustrated that I don't have a new sweater to wear. I want a new sweater to wear. And that was part of why I ended up finishing this. And it's also why after doing my inventory, I decided to not cast on anything new in January or February at all, nothing new. and just to work on previously existing knitting projects. And I'm going to go through those with you in just a little bit. And part of how I resist the urge to cast on is when I really get the itch to make something new, I make lists or plans or descriptions. I write down the pattern, I write down what yarn from my stash I would use, and I'm pretty sure that when April comes around, I really want to work on a cardigan. So I thought I'd share with you my cardigan dreams. First one I say is to finish my Trinigan. That's one of my works in progress I'm going to show you. I have decided that I do want to finish it because when it's done, I'm going to wear the heck out of it and I'm going to love it. So maybe when I finish my next sweater that I'm working on right now, maybe the Trinigan is what I'll pick up next. But I also do have dreams about new ones I'd love to cast on. I'd love to make something called a timepiece cardigan, and I have a pink light, sort of a, that's hard to describe. Newton colors are always hard to describe. There's a beautiful pink sweater quantity that I now have, and I think it would make a beautiful timepiece cardigan. I also have been daydreaming about a Riggy's cardigan, which I would make out of a dark brown Roma yarn. And I have the book the Riggy's cardigan is from here, so I thought I'd show you that too. It's designed by Gudrun Johnson, and it was published in Grand Shetland Adventure Knits. This is one of the books I've taken notes about in my notebook, and I really like the Riggy's cardigan. Here's a back view. You can see that's a big oversized cardigan with sort of little fitted sleeves coming out of it. There's a couple more pictures. Here's a black and white photo where you can see the front. It's got some really nice sort of slanted patch pockets, and it's just it's another big hug you can wrap yourself in. I think I'm admitting that I like knitting myself big hugs. There's a close-up of the texture of the pocket. And right now I'm really leaning towards maybe casting on the Riggy's cardigan, but we'll see. Okay, next, other cardigans on this dream list. There's something called the Gaskell cardigan. This is another one from a book. I've got some camel colored Peer Gynt I would use to make a Gaskell's cardigan. And this book is Echoes by Susan Crawford, and the Gaskell is actually right on the cover, so I don't have to search for it. You can see it's just a beautiful cabled sort of oversized grandpa style cardigan. That's another one, I would wear the heck out of it. Everyone's making Sari Nordland's book club cardigan, and that's a beautiful cardigan. I don't mean to, diss on the book club. I've dreamed about that one too, but I started thinking about cabled cardigans, and I looked at all sorts of patterns, including the book club, and I looked at books that I have, and I really came to rest on this. I think when I make my cabled cardigan, it is going to be this one. Okay, another one I've thought about is, I'm probably going to say this wrong, but there's a cardigan called the Ciorcal. It's spelled Ciorcal. And it is basically a circular shawl with little sleeves sticking out the sides. So it's another sort of big oversized drapey cardigan. And if I made one of those, I would make it out of that pinky nudidin. So I would make it instead of the timepiece cardigan. Another possible one is, I forgot to grab this book, but there's a cropped cardigan in Nora Gaughan's book, Twisted Stitches. It's a little fitted cardigan that instead of like big cables, it has little twisted stitch motifs on it. Kind of a fitted cropped cardigan. I think I could really wear that too, especially over dresses. And let's see. I hadn't decided which yarn I would use for that in this list. It takes a DK weight yarn. I've got a couple sweaters quantities of DK weight yarn. Not sure which one I would use for that cardi. I've also thought about the Staffin cardigan by Rebecca Clow, recently published, that uses worsted weight yarn. I've got a couple sweaters weight quantities of Patton's worsted, and more than a couple. I've got, I've got Patton's sweater quantity in white, sweater quantity in kind of a deep berry, a sweater quantity in gray. I think any of those would make a really cool textured Staffin cardigan. And then the final one on my list is another worsted weight cardigan. It's the Postscript by Jen Parasini of One Wild Designs. I've said before that I'm a One Wild friend and fangirl and all those things. This is another sort of big grandpa cardigan that Jen has designed. It's not a cabled cardigan, but it is a textured cardigan. It's got a wonderful texture. It looks really fun to make, and I think I would make that one out of the Patton's berry colored yarn. I think that would make a really satisfying cardigan. So that's 8. I haven't updated the list, but there's one more garter stitch cardigan that I've thought about. The Riggies that I talked about is a garter stitch cardigan. You could probably see that when I showed you the photo. And then who is it? Laura Penrose has recently released, just last week, a garter stitch cardigan that's a little more fitted than the Riggies. And if I was going to update this list, which I might do right after I record, I would add that as number 9. Obviously, I'm not going to make 9 cardigans anytime soon. Probably many of those will never be made, but writing it down, figuring out what yarn I'd use, putting it in that notebook means that it doesn't itch at me and make me cast it on, even though I'm not ready to cast anything on. I've been a little surprised by what a successful gift this is and how important it's become to my creative life. Now, work in progress, January and February. So I decided after doing my inventory that January and February would just be for works in progress. And then I proceeded to focus down on this sweater, which, as I've already shown off, is done. Loving it. Ever since I finished this sweater, I immediately started working on Anne Valley's Blossom. The Blossom is a worsted weight sweater. It has cables just down the arms. And unfortunately, I think it's in another room and I am not gonna jump up to go grab it. But I've been working on it diligently for about a week now. When I picked it up, I had cast it on and I had just knitted just a little bit around the collar and done some short rows in the back, and that was it. I just last night split for sleeves, so I've got it down to here. So it's turning into a real sweater. And my goal is to have it done by Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day is special to me because my birthday's around there somewhere. Not gonna tell you exactly when, but it's Valentine's Day-ish. And it sure would be fun to have a second finished sweater by my birthday. Can I do it? I don't know. I've never knitted a sweater that fast before, and I don't know if it's possible, but I'm having fun trying. Her Blossom pattern, Anne Valley, it's a really nice one. It's written really as if you have never knitted a sweater before. And I have heard some veteran knitters say that they find those patterns irritating. They like a bare bones pattern, and I guess that's fine. There's plenty of bare bones patterns out there for people who hate all the instructions. But even though it's not my first sweater and I don't need that many instructions anymore, I find it really comforting to work from the pattern, in part because I never have to feel confused or to wonder what's going on, because I always know if I look at the pattern, it's gonna hold my hand. It's gonna tell me what's going on. There's little diagrams that she's drawn to show what your piece is gonna look like on the needles. It's just really, it doesn't assume that you know anything about sweater making. And at the same time as it's relaxing and it's holding my hand, like there's a little challenge because I have very little cable experience. So I'm really learning as I work on those cables on the sleeves. And cables finally started making sense to me. Like, people talk about memorizing cable patterns, and I can't memorize. That's the thing about my brain. It does not memorize. It's been very frustrating in my life one way or another. What my brain does do is understand. And while working through the Blossom pattern and working on the cables on the arms, my brain suddenly started to understand cables, and I didn't have to memorize the cables because I suddenly understood how they worked. So all I have to do is know that it's a cable row and look at the cable, and I go, oh yeah, this needs to go here and this needs to go here, and I look at the chart and I confirm, yeah. And it's getting pretty effortless in a satisfying way. So that's fun. And the sweater is knit at a fairly loose gauge, and like this one, the increases in the raglans are eyelets. which kind of provides a little bit of ventilation. And I don't think it's going to be as warm as this sweater is. So my hope is when I finish the Blossom, maybe I'll be able to wear it through March. That'd be fun. That's part of why I worked on this one first, and then I picked up Blossom as soon as this one was done, is I was trying to strategize, how can I get some sweaters done that I can actually wear this winter, because I was feeling so frustrated I didn't have something to wrap myself up in that I'd made that was new. Okay, so there's the Blossom. Then another thing I've been working on, I also don't have this one with me, I apologize. My active WIPs I forgot to bring here. But I'm also working on a pair of socks. They're made with Roma Vandre yarn, and I'm making them for my husband. I made him a pair of socks with the Roma Vandre yarn last winter, and he wears them as sort of his house slippers. He wears them so much I mended them this summer because they had big holes, and he wears them so much that my men's now have big holes in them. And I decided instead of mending it again right away, I was just gonna knit him a new pair, specifically finish a pair that I started last winter and then gave up on. So I'm making him a pair of socks. They're blue with gray heels. The Vrandre sock yarn is kind of cool because it's about a worsted weight yarn and it's all wool, and it's got some really hardy long wool in there. And it means that it wears pretty well. I mean, I know I just said my husband wore big holes in them, but he literally wears them every day in winter. I don't think there's a lot of sock yarn that could go without getting holes being worn for, say, 4 months every single day. So I wouldn't worry about it. And don't worry about them being stinky either. He actually likes to double layer his socks. So the Roma Vandre socks are his outer layer socks, and then he changes the inside socks daily. So it's all good. One thing that's fun about them is that once they're knitted up, you actually wash them in hot water in your washing machine, and it's sort of, doesn't exactly felt it because the yarn is super hardy, but it sort of helps the yarn to bloom and to tighten up a little bit and get a little softer and yet a little more sturdy. And they are fun socks. I'm not sure why I stopped working on them last winter, other than I think I wanted to make something for me. But now when I'm on the go, when I'm when I'm at a meeting, something where a smaller project makes more sense, I've been working on the socks. I also have a Musselburgh hat that's been going for a while. The Musselburgh pattern is designed by Isolde Teague. It's the hat where when you knit it, it just looks like a giant deflated balloon. And then once it's done, you tuck it inside itself and you fold it up and you have a nice little hat. Also making that for my husband. Beautiful blue yarn. Dyed by Anne Valley of Little Skein, same designer who designed the Blossom. And that is, it's at the point where all I have to do is knit in circles for approximately forever. And that's like that's my meeting knit for the most part. If I'm in a meeting where I really need the vast majority of my brain space for the meeting, but I need to do something with my hands, I just knit on that hat in circles. And you know, after an hour-long meeting, I get a little bit on. It's probably not going to be done in time for my husband to wear it this winter, but I'll keep you knitting on it in meetings and he can wear it next winter. It's all good. Now we're getting to, so those are the 3 things I'm actively working on right now. I'm trying to stay focused. I'm trying not to have too many knitting projects because I decided I knit for joy and for mental health, yes, but having a finished object brings me joy and mental health, and I want more of those. So if I don't work on 15 projects at once, I'm more likely to get that stuff done. But I do have some works in progress that I'm going to pick up as soon as I finish 1 or more of those 3 things that I have going. So let me introduce you to them. Her name's coming up a lot. This is another Anne Valley pattern. This is a shawl. And it is actually made out of the yarn that I used to knit my husband's All for One sweater last fall, which he loves, by the way. He wears it every week. He's definitely getting another sweater someday because he's wearing that one quite a lot. So I had a fair amount of leftover yarn. It was a test knit when I did the sweater, and that means that I think the original pattern I was working for called from a little more yarn than you needed. And it was such a beautiful, squishy, delightful yarn that I just wanted to keep working on it once I'd finished the sweater. So I kind of thought, I just kind of cast about, like, what can I make with 2 skeins of this beautiful yarn? And I decided a shawl. And then I had a pattern for this shawl that Anne had designed. It's called the Avonlea shawl. It's a crescent-shaped shawl with a lace border. I haven't gotten to the lace yet. But I was working on this pretty well in December, and I really only dropped it when I started working on the Nuded In sweater. As soon as the Blossom sweater is done, I think this is something I'm going to pick up next, because it's actually, most of the crescent part is done. I really just need to do the lace border now. And I could be wrong, but I think it's about that thick. I don't think it'll take that long, because, you know, lace is open. You cover more space more quickly. I did fall in love with this project, actually. I was originally going to make the whole project just in green yarn, even though the pattern calls for having two colors that you kind of fade from one to the other. But I was like, oh, it's fine. It'll be beautiful in all green. But then I fell in love with the project as I was working on it, and I ended up deciding this project deserves two colors. So I bought this one skein of the same kind of yarn in this amazing rich brown. So when I'm now in the process of fading from one color to the other, you can see the brown starting to come through. And then when I do start working on the lace border, it'll be all that rich dark brown. And I really think it's gonna make sort of a narrow shawl. I think I'll wear it more like a scarf, but it's gonna be great. It's really gonna be something that I will cozy up in and delight in, I think. So very satisfying project. And you know you like a yarn. I will put the name of the yarn in the comments. I'm blanking right now on the hand dyer who did it. But it's a wonderful yarn, and you know you're in love with a yarn when you finish a long time sweater with it, and then you turn around and cast on another project right away with it because you just don't want to stop working with it. Okay, this big old bag, you'll notice here that I have a thing for beautiful handmade project bags. This one is made by the Fat Squirrel, and she makes great bags. That one was made by Fat Squirrel too. I like her bags. This one has a big project that I haven't done much on. It's Laura Penrose's blanket pattern, the Stella blanket. I started on it last fall, and I worked on it a little bit, never got that far. I actually was enjoying it. I don't mean to make it sound negative by the fact I didn't get that far. I just got distracted, to be honest. But the colorful squares are more little skein yarn. I'm part of Anne Valley's yarn club, so every 2 months I get a skein of beautifully dyed yarn. And I thought a blanket with the stars and her yarn would just be gorgeous. And it is. Look how beautiful this is going to be when I manage to get an actual star done. The taupe color is Knit Picks yarn that I got blankets quantity of. And I haven't decided, I might, when I start working on this, I might kind of punt and start and make cushions instead. Certainly a cushion made out of this yarn would be finished much sooner than a blanket. And I feel like I have lots of use for beautiful, cushy woolen cushions in the house. So we'll see. But I might go ahead and make the blanket. It would probably take me a couple years because I think it's something where I would work on it dedicated for a while to make a square and then wander off and do something else, wander back. But I decided I want to keep working on this because I want the finished project, whether it be a blanket or a couple cushions. I really want that. Okay, what next? All right, I've got a tub, and the tub has 3 projects in it. So I'll show you these next. The first is a pair of tube socks. It's just one sock so far that I was making for my son. He's a middle schooler. His feet are growing fast, so I didn't feel like making him a pair of socks that would fit him for 1 month. So these, instead of having a normal heel, they just have ribbing that goes in a long way. And then there's ribbing on the front too. And that way they will fit him for a while. His foot can grow for a while and they will still fit him, assuming I finish them, that is. This one is really pretty close to done, but I need to knit a second one. It's knit from a DK weight yarn. This yarn is The colorway is called Jazz, which is why I chose it for him, because he plays jazz, he plays saxophone. Um, I will post the pattern name and the specific yarn name. It might be Yorkshire Spinners. It's definitely something from England for the yarn. And yeah, I next, when I finish my husband's socks, this is one of the pairs of socks I might pick up next. The other thing that's in here has already been mentioned. That is the Trinnigan cardigan in process. The Trinnigan is a pattern by Andrea Maury. Once it's blocked, you'll be able to see the colorful bit a little bit more, but it's this beautiful green worsted weight yarn. And then this sort of orangey, pinky, color changing yarn. And it's gonna be a nice cardigan. I've really been wearing my gray long open cardigan quite a bit, and that's what made me realize I really would like to finish the Trinnigan, because the Trinnigan is a similar style, just sort of a big, open, sort of shapeless, boxy cardigan, and I've been wearing the gray one so much, I thought, boy, if I had this one done, I would be wearing it at least a couple times a week in the winter. The final project in here, you might remember, I mentioned it, that I did 1 week of the Stephen West mystery shawl knit along this year. And I didn't quit because I didn't like it. I actually loved it. I worked on this in a dedicated way for 1 week. I finished Clue 1 in 1 week exactly. Very proud of myself. And I had been in a knitting slump, and that week reinvigorated my creativity in that way. And I found that I wanted to work on some other stuff. So I didn't leave it because I didn't like it. I left it because it did its job. It reawakened me, and then I just dove into a bunch of other projects, and it's still here on the needles. I still plan to finish it someday. When I need that infusion of creative joy again for my fiber arts, I know that this shawl is waiting for me. And I'm fine with that. I'm not in a rush. So that's the tub. 3 works in progress there. Then we have the basket. Let me tell you about what's in the basket. More beautiful project bags. This one has something you'll find familiar. Frog and Toad are tucked in here, just right now. They don't normally live in there. But all the yarn for Frog and Toad and their outfits are in here along with the pattern. Toad's still naked. Frog is showing off something that I finished just a week and a half ago. Frog has pants. I made these while I was attending a really wonderful online writing workshop about 2 weeks ago. I made Frog some pants, and that's one of my works in progress, is clothing Frog and Toad. So next, I need to cast on a little jacket for Frog, and then I will make Toad's swimsuit, and then this project, which has been now going on for more than a year, will be done. And my son was very happy when he saw that Frog finally had some clothes. He's eager for Toad to get some clothes too, but he knows that he just has to be patient. Okay, next bag in here has another pair of socks in progress. When I finish my husband's current socks, which I'm trying to get done by Valentine's Day as a gift, I may work on some socks for my son, or I may work on this sock for me. Do you remember this? This is 2 pairs of socks, believe it or not. I was using the all-in-one method, and then I'm going to cut it in half, put in a cuff, put in a toe, put in afterthought heels, and I will have a pair of socks for me. I love socks. I have discovered this winter that I don't want to wear socks unless they were made by me. So almost every day this winter, I've worn a pair of socks made by me. I only have about 7 pairs that fit me, so any pair that I can add to my stash will be used and valued. So they should be pretty quick to finish up. I just need to do a toe, 1 cuff, and 2 heels. I don't think that'll take that long once I'm actually working on it. Okay, another work in progress. Another Fat Squirrel Made bag. Oh yeah, I actually couldn't remember what was in here. This is my color work hat. I decided I wanted to learn color work, and I started learning on this hat. And haven't gotten that far, but I still intend to finish it. I love the colors, and yeah, it's another skill that I want to acquire, and this hat is helping me. Another thing I did for that hat is, like most color work hats are not made for heads as big as mine, which I find a little frustrating. But I actually added a repeat to that hat so that when it's done, it'll be big enough for my head. So in addition to learning color work, I learned a little bit more about pattern modification. We'll see if it works out or not. And then this is another color work project in this bag. And that is, I think I showed these on an earlier episode, a pair of what are going to be fingerless mitts with these Selbu stars on them. So that's another thing I want to do. And you know what? The nuded in cushion that I mentioned was not in any of these. So that's one more work in progress, is the nuded in cushion. But that is all my works in progress. So you can see I will be plenty busy in February and this month, January. Not much left of this month. I am not hurting for not casting on things. The portfolio helps. When I get that cast on urge, I just start writing about it in there, and then that calms me down and I can go work on one of my actual existing works in progress. So that's been successful for me. Another thing I've been doing that involves, remember I mentioned a birthday present? My early birthday present is right behind me here. You can't get a great view of it, but it's a beautiful Reeves shot Saxony spinning wheel, and I love it. I got it used. There was a woman just north of town who had to give up spinning because she has arthritis in her hands, and I really wanted it. I saw it, it was beautiful. It's not often you see a wheel that beautiful for sale, like in my area, and talked to my husband, and we agreed it would be my birthday present this year. And it was another thing where I felt kind of silly as we were doing it. I was like, oh, is this another thing where I'm being silly and I'm indulging myself and blah, 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 blah. I love it. It is, I call it my heart wheel. I loved spinning before this wheel. I've got another wheel that I'll show you another day that I learned how to spin on with a treadle wheel. I've got an e-spinner that I really enjoy. I also spin on supported spindles, which I really enjoy. And all of those I love, but this one is special. I don't know why, but when I am freaking out, and sometimes I do that a lot these days, if I sit down and spend half an hour spinning at this wheel behind me, it relaxes me like nothing else, including not like the other wheels. There's something about spinning. I mostly am trying to learn to spin supported long draw on this wheel, and it's glorious. I love it. I'm so glad it's in my life. I'm so glad I decided to risk being silly, because one thing I've learned in my 2 years before this of pursuing joy is that often when I feel like I'm being silly, that means I'm onto something that's going to be wonderful. There's an editor voice in my head that doesn't want me to be happy, and if I push through it, I usually find something that involves a lot of happiness, a lot of joy. Thank goodness. Okay. Also related to spinning, I've actually got a article in Ply magazine. They have a blog. In the Ply blog, I have an article about spinning that should be coming out. I was told February 18th. So I'm looking forward to that. I wrote it, at this point I wrote it about a year ago, but it's still an article that speaks very much to my heart. It's about spinning as mental health self-care. And I will definitely be sure to mention it again on here and on social media when it comes out. And that is, we're getting to the end of what I wanted to talk about. I noticed I've been talking for almost 45 minutes, so I'm glad I didn't try to do a full podcast dance, because I think that would have been like at least an hour and a half, and I just wasn't up for that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea where I said I felt like I had figured out what I can do. Like, the world needs a lot of help. I can't do it all, but I can do something. What can I do? And here are the things that I've come up with for now. I'm not saying this is my final answer, but it's what I'm doing right now. because I'm not frozen, which means I can do things this time. One, of course, is I can contact my representatives. If I'm up to it, I can call their offices. If I'm not up to it, I can send an email, but some kind of contact to let them know that I'm paying attention. I want them here in this state. All my representatives are Democrats, but I need to let them know that I care about what's going on and that I need them to stand up and stand strong. I need them to know that I'm paying attention and that I support what they're doing. And if they're not doing enough, I want them to do more. So there's that. On a more personal level, that's something that probably all of us should be doing, right? I've volunteered for a larger volunteer job at my Unitarian Universalist church. Part of why I love this community is because people in this community do a lot of progressive work locally, and I want to do what I can to support that. And there's a committee I've been on for 3 years now as the committee's writer, and the chair of the committee recently stepped down. And I knew there was a good chance it would be hard to find another chair because it was hard to find her 2 years ago. And I just thought, you know what, if I can get some help with the writing, because I can't do both, I can't chair and do all the writing, but if I get help, then I think I could chair this committee. I think I could do a good job. So I've raised my hand. It's not official yet, it has to be approved by the board, but I think there's a good chance I'll be doing that. And that will be helping out a community that I love and a community that is doing good work that helps others. So I feel good about that. Another thing I've been doing is I've really recommitted to writing my book that I've been sort of writing for about 10 years now. And what I mean by committing to it is I actually have just recently found a coach, a writing coach. And specifically what she's going to help me with is she's going to help me with the process of putting together a book proposal to send out to targeted agents, to try to find a literary agent that will then help me sell this book proposal to a publishing house. So in addition to working on just creatively writing this book, I'm going to be working on this book proposal. It feels completely overwhelming to me when I look at all the things you're supposed to do for a book proposal, but that is why I decided to hire a coach to help me, because sometimes we need help, and that's okay. So I'm really excited about that, feeling reinvigorated in my writing, and excited about really making a commitment to my writing. The tentative theme of this book is that it's going to be a fiber arts memoir about wool, mothering, and mental health. I'm sure I'll talk to you about it more as I'm working on it and working on the proposal, but it's gonna combine all those things, and I hope it'll be something special. I hope it'll be something that speaks to some people and helps them. Another thing I can do is I can continue my practices of joy. That's spinning, that's knitting, that's working on my writing, that's doing my dreaming and my portfolio. And a thing that's new that's been added to my life is yoga. I've never done yoga before, but I've started working online with an instructor who is wonderful. And yoga is now part of my daily practice, and it really brings me a lot of unexpected joy. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I do. Also, I've been working more to reach out to friends and to reach out to my community, because those personal bonds of community and friendship are extra important right now, and they also bring me joy. And also another thing I can do, I know it's just a small thing, but it's something I can do, and that is I can try to update here more often. If I don't feel up to a whole podcast like I did today, I could just focus on something and share that. And if that brings even 1 or 2 people just a moment of lightness as they knit and relax and feel better and listen to me, then it will have been worthwhile. So yeah, let me know if there's anything you'd like me to talk about, whether it be talking more about knitting and how it helps my mental health, or do you see that little wooden box behind me? It's kind of like a table/box on legs. I could introduce you to that sometime. It is a sewing table, and if you lift the lid, there's a million little nooks and crannies inside, and it is where I store my knitting notions and knitting tools, and also some embroidery and sewing tools, and I love it very much. And if you think it would be fun to be given a tour of such a thing, I could do just a silly short little video where I do something like that. But I would like to show up more often as I can. instead of pressuring myself to always do the perfect episode, which doesn't exist anyway. So that's all. I will post this as soon as I can, and then try to make the show notes list things. I may post it at first without the show notes, but I promise I will come back and update them. And thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Please do the podcasty things if you've made it this far. Like, subscribe, comment. I love community. I love getting comments and talking to people. And I just appreciate you. Take a deep breath. Find out what makes you joyful, because finding your joy will also help you to find your power. And for a lot of us who watch these, our joy and our power, one of the places it begins is in the fiber arts. Bye-bye.